Greetings to all my fellow lunatics out there. And you know who you are. And what could Jeff possibly mean by lunatic? There's a factor that comes into play as far as the orbital movement of the celestial objects around the sun in relation to the Earth. And this is uh, there's a parameter, let's say, that exists at 23 degrees and 26 minutes of north and south of the equator. These are the two tropic lines, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. And the planets essentially, most of the time, stay within the boundaries of that 23, 26 minutes north and south. The sun never goes beyond it because that actually what sets up that boundary line. Saturn as well, it never goes beyond that. Control, fixture, the limitations, all those Saturn phrases. However, the other planets, they do that. Periodically wander out beyond that 23, 26 degree. And this is latitude. This isn't, the longitude kind of things that most people look at when they're looking at charts. The reason I bring this up is because, well, starting out Monday this week, we have a full moon. And for this entire weekend that we've just been through, the moon has been out of bounds, starting late on Friday and coming back into bounds, let's say Tuesday of this week, maybe Wednesday. What does Jeff mean by out of bounds? I'm going to read you a little thing from an author by the name of Paul Newman, not the one from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Out of bounds planets are wild and unrestrained. Their energy is extreme, magnified, uncontrollable, vulnerable, independent, awkward, extraordinary, privileged, and creative. Now, there's a lot of latitude as far as where one might take that, but just for this particular full moon consideration that's happening on Monday, early Monday, this upcoming week, not only is the moon out of bounds, but Mercury, how we think and how we communicate with one another, has been out of bounds since the 24th of June and will be coming back into bounds on the 6th of July. So during this week. Mercury, and it's got all the theoretically unrestrained wild sides. It began its out of bounds dance, shall we call it, while still in the sign of Gemini, which Mercury rules. And so the factor of curiosity, very much a Gemini factor, has been, inspired, shall we say, for the past week and a week plus to think out of the box. I think that's a good way to put it. Out of bounds, out of the box. Yeah, those two phraseologies really pinpoint how an out of bounds planet might be tuned into more effectively. And we do want to make sure that we're tuning in effectively to the planetary dance that we're all participating in. As I was really looking at, this first week of July, I haven't really thought much beyond that. We're in the sign of Cancer. That's where the sun is right now. This full moon It's in Capricorn. And during this particular week ahead of us, the moon, ruler of Cancer, is going to be going from that full moon experience in Capricorn down to the first quarter moon in Aries. So maybe look at the Sabian symbol for the particular degree that Capricorn in Capricorn where is from Dane Bridger's material. Full moon, Monday this week, real early in the morning. However, I think that because the moon has been out of bounds all week, I mean, all weekend, there's factors in play that mm, us who are lunatics, I was born, by the way, with moon out of bounds, and a number of us were back around the time of my birth. You know, it goes in phases where the moon will go out of bounds on a semi-regular basis for periods of time. And the 2020s basically are in one of those unique out of bounds, lunar out of bounds processes where those born throughout the 2020s are more than likely going to be born almost 50% of the time with the moon out of bounds, because every 2 weeks, the moon during these 2020s is doing its out of bounds dance. Thus, the lunatics are arriving in droves. Anyway, here's a Sabian symbol read from Dane Ridger's An Astrological Mandala book. You can kind of see it's well worn. It's my third one, by the way, third book. The Sabian symbol reads, an illustrated lecture on natural science reveals little known aspects of life. And the keynote, the ability to explore unfamiliar realms and discover the laws underlying the complex processes of nature. Now, the aristocratic garden from the preceding phase, which reads a large group of pheasants on a private estate, that's the previous Sabian symbol, become the laboratory and lecture hall of a modern college. The emphasis here is on the acquisition of extensive knowledge, the satisfaction of intellectual curiosity. Nevertheless, there is also an aristocracy of science. This is the modern type. Its use of acquired knowledge can pose as many problems as the use of hereditary aristocratic wealth. But it is man's essential function to become fully conscious of all the life forms and processes on this earth. Mankind is the conscious mind of the planet. That may be a debatable statement. Anyway, at the second stage, the intellectual search for empirical knowledge contrasts with the display attendant to the wealth and culture of an elite. Civilization is founded on an ever extended capitalization on knowledge and the use of technology. It features exploration preeminently at all levels. And that brings up all kinds of things in my consciousness. Oh, consciousness of the planet. One wonders if perhaps Gaia herself has a consciousness. To some, this might be a rather outlandish statement, but I'm not inclined to, lean into that particular perspective because I know that this planet, this Gaia essence, has a consciousness that is always there attempting to awaken our particular part to play in hopefully harmonious fashion with this planetary being upon which we dwell. Okay, so we got a lot of wild energy. Mercury, how we think is out of bounds, will be out of bounds for the first part of this week. It's out of bounds for this particular full moon, which is relevant because let's bring up a chart here. If you take a quick look at this chart, this is Monday chart, by the way, you can kind of see here's the moon up here. Well, it's 8 o'clock in the morning on Monday. It's already at 13 degrees of Capricorn. 2 degrees ago, which was actually around 5 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, it was opposing the sun, full moon. And because the moon moves a degree every 2 hours, you can kind of see Mercury down here at 14 degrees. By 9 o'clock in the morning, the out of bounds moon is going to be opposed to the out of bounds Mercury. And I'm inclined to say that this particular full moon has that mercurial out of bounds factor in play. You know, how how wild and crazy are your thoughts? And by the way, don't think that you're actually, dipping too far over the line into the lunatic realm alone. I didn't say that you weren't dipping across that line. The potential is there. Just how are we going to play it? Those of us born with a moon out of bounds, well, hell, we've been living with it all our lives. We say things that you're off the cuff and just kind of like, wow, where did that come from? Did I really say that? Oh, absolutely. And people kind of scratching their heads and going, oh, Jeff, where are you coming up with these things that you're talking about? Well, be adventurous. I think this is part of the flavor of this particular full moon. There's some adventure to say, take chances, feel beyond that realm that you generally have been, oh, shall we say, trained into thinking this is appropriate and this is not appropriate. Who's to really say what is most appropriate for each one of us if it's not each one of us ourselves making that determination? Anyway, when I looked at all the aspects of the different planets, they make aspects all the time. I'm just going to focus in on the moon for this week because we are in the Cancer season. We want to feel that energy of connection. What other kind of lunar terms could we come up with? Our needs, our inner contentment, instincts, reactions, attachments, ancestral memory imprints, experience of style and nurturing. Welcome to the moon. And since we begin this week with that out of bounds moon in its full expression, I'm going to give you an extra little thing to consider here. This is about the phases of the moon. We're basically this week, we're going to be going from the full phase to the last quarter phase. And there are factors that are in play that you might find useful to be aware of, since this week starts out with that out of bounds full moon. The lunar dance is inviting us. Come, play with me. And let's see where this takes us. So, there's the seeking of fulfillment, illumination, and pure vision. This is that full moon essence, time of spiritual awakening, balance, instinct, and love to realize the ultimate truth. There's the use of relationships to balance our polarities. And as we proceed on through the week, we get into that disseminating phase before the last quarter. Here we live in the moment, pursuing our highest vision and purpose. We spread our inspiration to others from the depths of our wisdom. Our inner teacher has great lessons for humanity. And it would seem that this would be a good time for some of those humanity level lessons on the planet. We're, as far as humans go on this planet, somewhat out of balance from what we would easily be able to say is harmony or harmonious with the experience of life on planet Earth. Oh, dance we will on our various trajectories with little care whatsoever as to what the effects of what we are doing are. Are you paying attention? Do you know what the ramifications of your desires, or is that greed that's driving your desires, might have in a longevity factor as to the being able to continue along those tangential paths? Anyway, let's I'm just going to move the chart here a day at a time as we go through the weekend. What you're going to see is the moon on our first day, Tuesday, moon dancing with Pluto. What deep levels of transformation are, moon is still out of bounds, begging for you to let go of something that you've been hanging on to perhaps just a little longer than is appropriate. That out of bounds moon, it's saying, take the chance. Be different. Don't get stuck in a rut. Because from the Plutonian perspective, it will take you out. And as we continue on through the week, you see how quickly from day to day that moon moves. We're doing the dance through Aquarius. And as we do that, we get here to the end of Aquarius on Thursday. By the way, Thursday is the day that Mercury finally comes back in bounds. Our thinking, has been very adventurous during this, from the 24th of last month to now. But we oppose on this day Venus and Mars over here in Leo. There's how are you doing with that masculine and feminine parts within you? We all have them. Are they talking to one another, or is one trying to be more predominant? We go through those moments. Anyway, Friday comes on, the moon has just danced across Saturn. What limitations of Pisces, our imagination or our connection to source might be inspired by this lunar connection. On Saturday, the moon is holding hands with Neptune. Oh, the levels of unlimited creative imagination. They really are being stimulated. Can you feel the potential there? Can you? How, and this is Pisces, how are your dreams unfolding? Are you paying attention to them? Do you have a dream journal? I would suggest, you know, doing that. You may be very surprised at what is coming through from that dream cycle. And finally, Sunday. The moon is left Pisces, it's in Aries, action and impulse land. And by the end of that day, because remember, the moon moves 2 degrees, I mean, a degree every 2 hours. So here we are, we're at 17 degrees for the sun, 6 degrees behind that, here 11 degrees for the moon, which means in 12 hours, so about 8 o'clock in the evening, as Sunday wraps up for this week ahead, the moon will form its last quarter to the sun. Crisis in consciousness. This is a term that came from the Dane Rudger level of lunar considerations. I'm just going to leave it at that. And perhaps the crisis in consciousness that might be the stimulation for the events of this week is, how have you played with that out of bounds factor this week and last week? Have you been curious enough? And where did that curiosity lead you? And from the lunar out of bounds thing that happened over this weekend into the early part of this week, did you feel, did you sense potentials that, may have appeared awkward, unless, of course, you were tuned into your lunatic side, which says, take chances, be adventurous, feel the energy of life percolating. Hold those thoughts. As we begin this week, contemplate. Has there been a new page turned in the book of life that is you? This is one of the options. Have an enjoyable week. And by all means, don't forget to love one another. It's really important. Ciao.